All right, as promised, today we're going to go over the test. I have not finished grading all of them, sorry, but I'll show you what I did, and hopefully it'll help. Probably shouldn't be taping this, because once I tape it and it's out there, then I never want to give that test again for like a class next year or whatever, but with Tiffany not being here, I don't mind doing it at all. So, am I right in assuming? Now, this was the test. Start and save a new empty ASP.NET project to your desktop called Guessing Game. Create the two new folders, images and CSS. All right. Put an H1 tag in that said, guess the secret number game. Get an image to put on top of that, I guess. Set up a table with 6 rows and 4 columns. Set all this stuff up accordingly. So bottom line is this. On the first page of this test, which did all the setup stuff, am I right in assuming everybody can do that? Yes? Okay. So the reason I'm saying that is I'm going to show you the one that I did. And it's, believe me, it's not grand, not glorious. It works. I guess that's the main thing. And the other thing that I have found is working on this. So that's what mine looks like. Again, I think I even showed you one. I went back and rewrote it. I came in and I tried to go and make everything the same column size, but that didn't work very well. So, and you'll see it when I run it in just a second. But again, that's everything that's in there, okay? So, HTML labels, ASP.NET buttons, ASP.NET text box, ASP.NET labels, ASP.NET validators, okay? So that was the first page. Then on the second page, you were told to add the code for the guess button. Well, that may have, I think that's where a few people got tripped up, so I want to show you what I did. And then add the code for the rank button, and then add the code for the clear button. Well, one reason that I told you that at least I would recommend that you would read the entire test first is, you know, I wrote it like this, and then I was going to change it because I thought, well, you really should do the clear button. I thought, no, I'll save it. Just do it that way. And, you know, see if people do it in that order or they do it in their own order, type of an idea. All right. But when we take a look at the code, the first thing is, and I know some of you even talked to me about this, and you said, hey, I've got a problem. All right. And the problem was, like, when you first started running it, you might have gotten an error, or when you clicked it and you got that required thing, and then you tried to, you know, when one of the validators came up and you click clear, then nothing happened. All right. That kind of an idea, and everything got stuck, for lack of better words. All right, so let's take a look at it. Again, what I'm showing you is a way of doing it. All right, so I know a couple of you said that you got it done, or came darn close to getting it done. If you didn't do it the way that I did it, it's not a problem at all. That's actually a good thing. If you got it to work and you did it in a way different than the way I did, that's a good thing. I think I've told you that before, that if it was up to me, if I gave you an assignment and I got 8 of them back and they all looked like mine, that to me is a problem. All right, especially in a field like this. I don't care if you're talking programming, web development, you know, there's a place for creativity in there. All right, so taking it from the top, again, this is how I did it. I came and set up a bunch of constants. All right, guess too low, guess too high, correct, error occurred, which really shouldn't ever happen, but I put it out there as a just in case. All right. For instance, let's assume that we asked a person what their size was, and we assume that everybody's size is either a small, a medium, a large, or an extra large. Okay, you all with me? So we're saying enter a 1 if you're a small, enter a 2 if you're a medium, enter a 3 if you're a large, enter a 4 if you're an extra large. And we keep them inside of some kind of a loop, all right? And while the number that they enter is less than 1 or greater than 4, we make them re-enter. Everybody with me? We've done this kind of thing before. So the idea is once you fall out of that loop, you must have entered a 1, 2, 3, or 4, correct? All right, so let's say later I'm going to do a switch statement. Then I'm going to switch, I'm going to say case 1, then you're a small, case 2, you're a medium, case 3, you're a large, case 4, you're an extra large, correct? I still put in a default case. It should never happen. But just in case it does, the program doesn't know how to handle it. That's what that error occurred is for. I don't think it'll ever be hit. I ran the program probably a good 30 or 40 times because I had to practice expert and I had to practice novice and professional. All right? But I couldn't, it never hit. All right. Then I have const int max expert, const int max prof. What are those?
Rank level.
They are for the rank level. 7 and below is expert, right? So the max that you could get and still be an expert is 7. 8 to 15 is professional. So the max you can get and still be a professional is 15. Okay, that's why I use those. Did you have to? Of course not. But that's the way that I did it. All right. And like you, I had problems when I first ran it. Sometimes it would work and sometimes it would be a little funky or whatever. But I want to call the generate random number, but I only want to call it once. I don't want to keep calling it and calling it and calling it. And I think, Evan, with you used like a label or something, which was fine. There's a lot of ways that you could do this. The way I did it was, there's my random number, and I actually initialized it to -1. So it has an initial value. Not only that, that value should never be hit, correct? The random number should only be between 1 and 100. So I said if the random number is equal to 1, then I know I haven't run anything yet. So I tell it to go in and generate a random number. So I always have 1 when I start. Does that make sense? All right. And it might be one of those times where if you ask me a question later, why'd you do this? Why'd you do that? Because I wanted the program to work. All right. And I went in, and how did I find this out? Well, I started setting breakpoints, and nothing was getting hit. So I knew there was some kind of a problem in there. So what I did was I kind of kludged it, and I put a bunch of little fixes in, and then I said, okay, put a breakpoint in this routine just to make sure I'm getting into it. And then I was. But that wasn't the way to handle it. There are different ways this could be handled. This is basically, and I probably should have put a comment here, handle start of program. All right. So I call generate random number. That's a pretty simple routine. You can see my breakpoint is still there, but notice you can disable it. It's not deleted, it's disabled. So it's got, instead of having the filled in circle, it's just a circle that's not filled in, and the program still works. It doesn't stop at those. But I know where I had issues, so I kept them in there in case I wanted to do it again later. All right. Now this, what's that doing? Generating the random number. But the first line that's in there is doing what's called seeding the rand. It's using the current time, because if I go like this and I go like this, those are 2 different times to the computer, because the computer works on hundredths of a second. So when it's using something to base the random number off of, I'm grabbing the current time. So every time it's got to generate a new random number, the idea is this. What I want is I want a number like pi. What's special about the number pi? What? That's part of it, but that isn't even the main thing. It never repeats what comes after that. And that's what ideally, that's what I'd want here. I wouldn't want the person, if you don't seed the rand like this, first of all, I don't even know if it'll work, but if you don't seed the rand well, there'll be a pattern. And it might be after 5 games, it might be after 50 games, but it'll just start to repeat. So, if it had 5, then 55, then 36, then 47, after a while, it'll repeat that same pattern. You don't want that. All right. This is maybe a kind of a funky little game, but it's a game nevertheless. And if somebody could figure it out, and I'm dating myself here, but you've all at least seen Pac-Man, right? Those games. I still remember, this was years ago. I went to a movie with my wife, and we were waiting outside to get into the theater, and they had a couple of arcade games there, and one of them was Pac-Man. And this guy walked up and he put his quarter in, and his girlfriend dropped an F-bomb and said, "I'll see you at the end of the movie." All right? Because he had mastered all of the patterns for Pac-Man. So he could just keep playing and playing. And when we got out, the same guy was still there. I don't know if it was the same game. I don't care. But we don't want that in our game if we can help it. So, again, this is actually referred to as seed the rand, then generate a random number between 1 and 100. All right? And since we set it here to an integer, okay, that's the other thing. Every programming language handles the way that they actually do seeding the rand like this differently. Does that make sense? Okay. I'm going to change the order up just a little bit. I'm going to jump down because I think it's the easiest one. So I'm going to jump down into the, or up. So that was the clear button. I told you to write a different routine. I told you not to put the code in the clear button. Why? What? Well, that's part of it. That's a very good answer, really. To get you used to making your own routines. But over and above that, we may decide we want to add a menuing structure to this later. So not only could you do this via buttons, but you could do it via menu options. So now I'll be able to call this clear routine via either a button or a menu option. Does that make sense? All right. So every time we click clear, I want to generate a new random number. I want to take what was in my guess, that text box, and clear it out. I want to take whatever my rank was and my status. My rank is my professional, novice, expert. Maybe these should have been flipped, but it's fine. My status is too high, too low, correct? Then I want to put the focus back on the text box, and this is my number of guesses. Why am I zeroing that out? Because I'm starting over. And I didn't do it the first time, and I was wondering why I guessed the number in 3, and it told me that I was a novice. All right, it was because I was a professional the time before, and once it added 3 to it, since I didn't go and reset my number of guesses, all right, I was over 15. All right, so there's the clear, so the generate we went over. So this was the guess button. I tried to kind of pattern it after what was in the book. So if you click the guess button, I just called check guess. All right, and probably most of you got this, or we're pretty close here. Why do we need the if is valid?
Validation.
Yeah, well, yes, but what is that? What is that saying right there?
If it's valid, then it's
It is valid, but what, you know, and you're going along with that, that means
do any of that before.
it's only going to do that if neither of the validators came up, which means we know it's numeric and we know it's between 1 and 100, correct?
Yeah.
So we have met our minimal validation that we put in. So in other words, if the number is between 1 and 100, all right? Now, when I wrote this, I thought to myself, I never know how long it's going to take people to do a test. I really and truly don't. Okay? But one of the things I thought of doing was having you set it up so that you could not, if you guessed the same number, if you'd already guessed the number, that it wouldn't take that guess. Do you understand what I'm saying? And there's different ways we could do that. Probably the easiest way would be to create the equivalent of an array list or a list and just keep throwing numbers in there and then check through that. But then I thought, well, if people wouldn't be able to figure that out, that'd be just one less thing they'd get done. So I thought, no, I'm not going to do that. But there are ways to do it. So what are we doing here? If the number was valid, okay, this convert guess in the text box, oh, not a text bow, to an int variable, right? Okay. This is just, some of you I looked at yours and you did this. You said if guess is less than a random number, you said label status dot text equal too low. Else labeled, etc. And there's nothing wrong with doing that. All right? But I'm only setting that one time. Okay? So in other words, I'm saying here, and the other thing too, I looked at a couple of yours, and how many times should you actually be incrementing that number of guesses counter? Once, right? That kind of thing should not be in an if or an else statement if you're doing it every time. I put it here because I know now you made a guess. And that guess had to be between 1 and 100. Does that make sense to everybody? So it's not that if you didn't do it like that, I'm not saying, hey, you didn't do it like that, yours is wrong. No, I don't mean that at all. All right? So if the guess was less than the random number, it's going to set this thing to too low, which we set up here was guess too low. All right? Otherwise, if it was more than the random number, guess too high. Otherwise, if it equals the random number, correct. And I even said you guessed the random number, and I told you how many guesses you guessed it. You didn't have to do that. But if the person wanted to know, wow, how close was I to a professional? How close was I to an expert? It'll now show them that. I didn't put that in there. You didn't have to put it in. All right? And then I call determine status. This is what's actually going to determine their rank, right? We only want to do that after they've guessed the number. So the only place you could call, I called my determine status, okay? But maybe it should have been called determine rank, probably. But that's fine. I think everybody gets it. The only time that you want to determine whether they are an expert, a novice, or a professional is after they've guessed the number. That's it. All right, so that's what I'm saying right there. This was that thing, error occurred. That should never happen. Okay, because once we got in there, that saying that since it validated, it must be a number between 1 and 100. So we've handled a number greater than a random number, a number less than a random number, and a random number. So that should never, ever be hit. All right? But just in case. All right? In that 1 in a trillion chance, but it should never happen. This was determine the status. Again, I said if the number of guesses was less than or equal to 15, expert. If it's less than or equal to 7, expert. Else if it's less than or equal to 15, professional. Else, novice. Okay? And if we run it, that'd be great now if I run it, it breaks or something. But I tried it this morning too, and it worked just fine. Does everybody know the key to playing this game and winning it? All right. Some of you are shaking your heads. Yes. Some of you aren't shaking your heads. Some of you, I don't even know if you're listening. But start at 50, and let's say your number is 87. Let's say it's 87. So you guess 50. All right. It'll say too low. Well, now you've got 50 of yours already out there. So then you say 75. So you're taking the midpoint each time. You see, and they say no. Now in 2 guesses, you've eliminated 75 of your 100 possibilities. All right? So let's just say next, you happen to guess high, so you say 90. And they say too low. Well, now you've eliminated 1 to 75 and 90 to 100. All right? So now in 2 or 3 guesses, you already know that must be between 76 and 89. So you just keep going in the midpoint all the time, all right? And I probably have told you this before, but I'll always remember that because I would do that with my kids, especially when they were little. Let's play a game, Dad. Especially when you're driving, it's not all that easy to sit there and play a game with your kids, all right? I'd say, okay, you guys think of a number between 1 and 1,000, and I bet you I can guess it, in like 10 guesses. And I would do it, they could never figure out how I did it because I never told them. All right, when they got bigger, I told them, they were like, oh man. Okay, so we come in here, and as Ethan said, we'll guess 50. Guess, and that was too low. All right, so I will change this, make it 75. That's too high, so again, I know it's got to be between 51 and 74, right? I'm just going to keep trying to cut it about in half. 63. It's too low, so now it's between 63 and 74. So in 4 guesses, I know it's got to be between 63 and 69. That was just with 4 guesses. There's 5 guesses. Okay, so now it's got to be either 67 or 68 or 69. Okay. Okay, I bet you could all guess it now. Okay. So I get done with that. I clear. Come in again. I'm purposely going to be doing this, so I'm going to guess too high, but I'm going to just keep guessing that. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So I know now I should be a novice once I get it. Okay, and it says that I am. All right, then run it one last time, so I'm going to clear again. Oh, I should really check these. Required. Okay. So those both appear to work, correct? Now, I set mine up, so again, since I put that plus num guesses inside of my check guess, I am only counting valid guesses. Okay? To me, that makes sense. I mean, if I come in here and I put hello, that's not really a guess because what I put in was invalid. Okay? So, let's see, 35. Too high. Wow. 2 guesses. I'm an expert. I didn't want to be an expert. Okay. That's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right. That's 11. 12, 13, 14. That made me a professional. Does all that make sense? All right, and I don't know, honestly, because it was the first test, so I don't know if I was expecting too much. I really don't. All right, but I figured I wanted to have time to really sit there and kind of dig yours apart to see what people have done. Okay, if it turns out that Evan said that he got it, and I believe him, but if no one else did, then what I'll do is I may end up cutting the point value of the test in half and making it worth 50 instead of making it worth 25. Did you do the other thing, Evan?
No.
No? Okay. Because I was going to say then you could have gotten a 60. So, all right. Any questions on that?
I think the problem, I feel like all the code that you put in, with the exception of the -1 random number thing, I have pretty much all of that, but for
I don't think you're going to be the only one.
like the validation just kept messing
Yeah.
up. I don't know why.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
And I believe the reason why is the way that those validators run. That literally since there was no random number to start, and you can't if you called it in page load, it would have screwed stuff up if you would have called it every time, because page load runs a bunch of times. All right, so then I went and actually Googled. I said, okay, what if I want something just at application startup? And there is a global.asax file that you can put stuff in. But you don't get a global.asax file when you build an empty app.
Yeah.
But you can go in and add, But then you add a whole class called for global A, and that's really a pain to do that, because then you have to make those two classes talk to one another. I tried to come up with other ways of doing it, and again, I'm not saying the way I came up with was the best way. It was a way, as I mentioned with Evan. I think, am I right? I think you had like a down here you had some labels or something, or you had something that you checked to see if it was a string. I don't remember what it was.
I did it similar to you, where, but I just made a dummy value.
Okay.
Set it to the empty string, and then when it called on page load, I set it to the letter A.
Okay.
Set it to a button.
Could you set
Generate-
what to a button?
Generate random number button.
Could you?
Generate your number here, and then once that's done.
I'm not going to say that's impossible,
Yeah.
but what like I said, I tried doing this. Geez, probably 7 or 8 different ways.
Right.
To me, the way that I did it made the most sense, because I really started to think about, okay, what is the problem here? And that's what I came up with.
I mean, I had it set up to where like it has a little label right there pointing to the clear button saying like
Right.
clear to start the game, and so like it would start like actually generate a random number
Yep.
for breakpoints, but then
Well, and again, if it turns out, let's say that 4, 5, 6, 7 of you, let's say that you've got it basically done, but it just breaks right there. I'm not going to take off, more than 4, maybe 5 points at the most. Okay.
yeah, I just didn't know why the validation was messing up because it wasn't finding the random number at all, no matter what I put in. So I don't know.
Any other questions on this? And believe me, I'm not going to say, would you all right now, do you think, and I'm not going to give you the test, but if I gave you this test right now, do you think you could all do it and complete it successfully? All right. No? Why is that?
I still don't get how you keep it from generating a number or generating a random number every time I press guess.
Well, like I said, my guess is, no pun intended, that did your guess routine look like mine?
Really not.
Because my guess routine said every time you press that button called check guess, and there's nowhere in here where I'm telling you to generate a random number unless you guess the random number, in which case you're going to call, your determined status, etc. Really, the only way that you should be able to generate a new random number is by clicking the clear
Where are
button.
you generating that?
I'm generating it 2 places. At the beginning of my program,
Right.
by putting it right there, and the only other place is in my clear routine.
Okay.
All right. I only want to generate it.
When I went up to you though, you had me put it as a global.
No, the random number is a global. You asked me where I'm
Seed
generating it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
You can, that seed, I moved it all over. I could take this line. This should work fine if I put that at the top of the program, that
That's what I
line.
did, yeah.
And that's probably cleaner because you really only have to seed it once.
Yeah.
All right. But like I said, when I was playing around with it, I was moving stuff all over the place. All right. That probably is cleaner to take this line and put it at the top of the program. All right. You kind of look at it, for lack of better words, as it's doing a reset, and it's saying I'm going to generate a bunch of random numbers now, but I'm going to do them throughout the program, but my reset only really has to take place once. That's not resetting the random number. All right. That's the generator for the random numbers. Any other questions on this? Anything that doesn't make sense? I am going to, right now, we're not breaking yet, but I'm going to stop taping here. And so